Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We have with us my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. First one back since Australia. Been a few weeks off. There's a lot to talk about. You ready to roll?
Absolutely, you're right. There were so many events packed in the last few weeks that we saw some really interesting developments.
Yeah, one housekeeping item before we get going. I did release a pod down in Delray with two former Illinois men's tennis players, Alex Vucic, and Alex Kovacevic. They go by Vuki and Kova. They're both down in Delray. They're both doing playing well. They're in the top 100. Vuki's a little higher. For you Illini fans, it was a fun 15 minutes. Obviously, I did it by myself. We were trying to get Steve down there. Steve, I know you had another obligation that couldn't get down there, but it was a fun one. But we're glad to have you back. And with that, Steve, I want to start. There were 3 coaching splits that happened since Australia. And I'll categorize this as the first one, kind of indifferent, not really shocked by it. The second one, shocked. The third one, kind of expected because of the results we're seeing. So I will start with the first one. Boris Becker, Holger Rune. I didn't know if that was really going to be a long-term thing, Steve.
Well, David, I didn't either, but I was hopeful because I thought he saw in Becker, he knew what Becker had done for Novak in a critical stage for him over a couple-year period when Novak really turned the corner and starting to win the majors again in that period in 14 and 15 into 16. And so I thought maybe they got off to a good start, some decent results last fall. I was hopeful, and I was even more hopeful after Severin Luthi left the picture that, okay, now Boris got the reins to himself. So I'm not quite sure what went on there. He wished him well, and he talked about how he didn't have the time to devote to him, but he would have made the time to devote to him if the circumstances and offers had been there on the table the way he would have liked. So that's unfortunate because I think he was the right guy, actually. Knowing Rune's personality, knowing Becker's psyche, I could have seen that working. So I must say I was disappointed.
The second one was I think way more surprising to everyone, and that was the split of David Witt and Jess Pegula. Obviously, the great work that David Witt has done with basically he's 2 main players through his coaching career was Venus Williams and Jess. I think the reason you could look at it and be like, okay, he's maybe peaked with Pegula. At least maybe Pegula may have thought this. She wants to get through that quarter at a slam. That's the hurdle that she hasn't gotten through yet. Maybe that's why she thinks she needs someone else. Not that David can't get her through it, but maybe just after a while, hearing a different voice, as you hear athletes and teams often say. That was surprising, but again, because Jess so badly wants to take that next step, and it's not like she's 22, 23, 24 years old. These next few years are really, really key to Jess's career if she hopes to make that jump.
Yeah, I was definitely struck by the parallel you just drew with Venus. Venus, at the time, Witt acted as if it came out of left field. He didn't know what had transpired that led Venus. He was blindsided in a way, and I think he was again here. I don't quite entirely get it. I think he did a great job with Jess, and she was in the tour finals at the end of the year. Her ranking slipped a few places, but only because the likes of Rybakina and others they played so well. She still had a great year. No, she didn't get past the quarterfinal syndrome at the majors, but that was something of a mystery to me. I thought he'd done a great job with her. I certainly hope, and I'm sure she has her justifiable reasons, that she finds an adequate or a better than adequate replacement so that she can make those inroads, because I don't think she's satisfied, David, to suddenly break the quarterfinal syndrome and start making semis. When you played at her level, you really want to see if you can win 1 or 2 of these majors. And I think under the right circumstances, she could. So I'm fascinated to see which coach she lands in the weeks ahead. She's surely not going to let it go for long And I suspect she's got a lot of feelers out already. And I hope she gets somebody with whom she's compatible that can really drive her on to that next level that would enable her to compete for a major, starting with getting into a final and then seeing if she can pull one off.
Do you think it was because of she's gotten to the quarters and she hasn't been able to get over that hurdle? That, again, nothing against David, but maybe just hearing another voice, maybe that could be the difference to get her through that next
I
step.
think she knows, she's honest with herself. I think she knows that if you're 4-1 in the third against Vondrousova and you're ready to be in the Wimbledon semis, he can't play those points for you. I've always felt like that. I never forget the famous conversation with Agassi and Sampras on a plane ride over to Italy in '95. And that was at a stage where Annacone was taking over for Gullickson, who was ill with brain tumors, and where Brad Gilbert was really doing Andre a world of good. And Andre, in the conversation, which we recounted in a New York Times Magazine profile, talked about how impressed he was with Gilbert's knowledge of the game and what he was able to tell him and what a difference it was making in his game. And Pete was, somewhat skeptical. He wasn't questioning Gilbert's credentials, but he was saying, look, you're out there serving a 3-4 30 all final set, second serve. They can't, Brad Gilbert can't win that point for you. Meaning that he's always felt it's in your hands. You absorb what the coach has to tell you, but in the end, you're going to determine your own destiny and your own fate. So I think all players need to keep that in mind and not be too quick to blame coaches for losses that were really their own doing.
And then the third split, Steve, which I think just because of the results the last couple of years, you could kind of see it coming, and that's Tom Hill and Maria Sakkari. So not shocking, just because Maria herself knows that she can have more consistent results going deeper in the tournaments, especially what she accomplished in 2021, being oh so close in 2 of the slams. That being the French and the U.S. Open that year. So that to me was not surprising one bit.
No, totally agree. And I think that's one where she likely will benefit. She's had a long run with him, and now it's time for a new voice, new blood, new thinking. And she's had so many, as you know, better than anybody, so many debilitating, just awfully difficult to absorb losses from winning positions. We've seen it time and again. She's a fighter, and she never loses through lack of effort, but in the clutch, things haven't always gone her way. So I think she is wise to pursue that, because there's been a pattern here, and there could be somebody out there that can get her past that pattern and get her to be better at closing out matches against her leading rivals.
The one other coaching relationship that's not a split, I actually saw it in person when I was down in Delray, and we'll talk about Delray in a bit. But Ryan Harrison, who hasn't played on the Pro Tour for several years now, he's dipped his toe into coaching a couple different players. He's actually now coaching Jordan Thompson. So it was interesting to see Ryan back on court, not in a playing capacity, but he's coaching Jordan Thompson. So we'll see how that coaching relationship goes.
He's got a good mind, David. I'm kind of encouraged about that one. I think that's going to be a nice blending of the minds. And Ryan always struck me as a very probing kind of person, that he knew what he was doing out there. He didn't always execute, and he had injuries, and there were reasons why he didn't ever fulfill his potential as a player, but he's got a good tennis mind. I know that from having interviewed him. So I'm confident that this alliance is going to gel. And Jordan Thompson has shown signs in the last year of the progress that he can make, and his ability to sort of shift his game and come forward at the right times. He's a bit more versatile than a lot of other players, and I like this unionship. I like it, and I'm encouraged.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that relationship plays out. Again, we haven't done one of these podcasts since Australia, so a few things have happened. Obviously, the Dallas event, it's an indoor event. Tommy Paul taking out Marcos Giron. Both Tommy and Marcos parlayed those results into having another good result in Delray. Tommy made the finals. He just lost earlier today to Taylor Fritz. Marcos Giron got to the semis in Delray, he lost to Fritz as well. So the timing of the Dallas event is interesting to me because you go from Australia playing outside, you then go 1 week to play indoors in Dallas. Before Dallas, I think it was the New York Open. Even before all that, we always had the San Jose tournament. We had the Memphis tournament. You had these random weeks indoors, and then you go to Delray, and then basically it's outside until the fall season. Always interesting to just kind of have that. I don't know. I mean, Dallas, you could almost play it outside. It's a little tricky, the weather this time of year. But I was surprised when I was in Delray. I saw both Marcos and Tommy on site Monday night. So they had flown in from Dallas on Sunday after the final. They were on site like Monday early evening. And they just wanted to get a quick hit in just to get used to being outside again.
Yeah.
So a little tricky for the players. Those are things that, intricacies that maybe the general public doesn't necessarily see, or it stands out to them, but that's tricky when you go from indoors to outdoors.
It is, but at least it's still on hard. And I think we saw in the case of both Tommy Paul and Marcos Giron that they made the transition easily. And what impressed me about both is it's very hard. You can't bank on playing 5 matches in a week and being in the finals or winning the title, and then realizing you're scheduled for another event the next week to try to keep this going and potentially be playing 10 matches in 12 or 13 days. That's what they were up against. And they both had great tournaments again in Delray. It was unfortunate for Tommy. Interestingly, sort of the reverse of what he experienced against Tiafoe, where he beat Tiafoe 2-2, and Francis could never get on track. He played, by his standards, a very poor match.
Yeah, Steve, that was weird because you usually, if Francis loses, you used to seeing Francis really battle and fight and climb. I don't know if he wasn't feeling well or something, but that was not the fact that Francis lost, but the way that he lost. It just did not look like your typical Francis Tiafoe out there that day.
Didn't, no, not at all. His shot selection was bad. His demeanor was very downcast. There was so little animation. The crowd tried to pull him out of it. He played what for him, I don't mean this harshly, was a second-rate match. But in turn, Tommy felt like it was one of his best matches of the last 2 years because he was hitting out so freely and not missing much. So that he was going to be tough to beat under any circumstances, but it should never have unfolded the way it did. Very disappointing. And then in turn, the final. I thought this would be much closer with Fritz and Paul in the final, and Taylor was on his game, and
I thought the second set. I thought even though the scores you could say were kind of similar between Francis and Tommy, and then Taylor and Tommy, I thought Tommy Paul battled in that second set.
He did.
It had several break points at that 3-3 game. It was a long 3-3 game.
Yeah,
he couldn't break, and then when he didn't, the old pattern, right? You don't break, you get immediately broken. Taylor then serves it out. I mean, I think Tommy was 0 for 7 on break points, but to me, I thought the quality of the final was way better than the semifinal match.
Oh, it was, but I didn't feel like Tommy did himself full justice. As you alluded to, all those squandered break points didn't help, and he didn't look like quite the same player. Had he been, I think we would have been looking at more of a 7-6, 6-7, 7-5 match either way. But all credit for Taylor. He's off to a terrific start this year. He showed us that improved form over in Australia before he lost to Djokovic in the quarters, and he beat Tsitsipas over there. And I have a feeling that, the more I think about it, the more I think he's going to hold that ground somewhere between 8 and 10 in the world all year long. If he can go past that, all power to him. But I don't think you're going to see him slipping out of the top 10 with the kind of tennis he's playing right now.
And I saw them on site, and I spoke to Michael Russell briefly about it. And I mean, they were very encouraged how Taylor played in Australia, obviously bumped up against Novak. But they were encouraged with the start of the season. Obviously, they're continue to be encouraged with the result in Delray now.
Well, David, is it true that when you had that discussion with Russell, that he asked you to join the camp and that you might be now become an additional coach for him?
I wish I had that offer, but no, not quite. But Michael is one of the nicest guys. He's been on
Oh,
the
he
pod a
is.
couple years back, and I've just continued to speak to him, whether it's just through social media or whether it's on site in Delray. Him and his wife are very nice people, some of the nicest people on tour. One thing that stuck out to me, and I texted you about it, Steve, is that the height of Taylor Fritz. He's 6'5", and I mean, like, I didn't realize he was that tall. I looked it up after I texted you. I knew he was taller than obviously Tommy Paul and Francis Tiafoe. Those guys are not tall. So that didn't surprise me that Taylor was taller than them. But I mean, every time I see Taylor in person, I'm like, wow, he's tall. He's 6'5". That's big height on tour, Steve.
It is big height, and we did have that exchange. I followed up with that with you, that there's a double-edged sword. He's got all this easy power, and he's got a fantastic first serve, and I love the way he laces into the two-hander. I love the follow-through. The forehand is a big shot. He can do remarkable things from the baseline, which he did for 2 sets against Djokovic in Australia, by the way, before physically he faded. But then I think the problem is he ever going to have the mobility? I mean, the Tommy Pauls, the Tiafoes, these guys can all move a little bit better than Taylor, in my view.
Taylor defended well today. He defended
did.
well today.
Oh, no, he did. In fact, I think he's definitely improved in that area, but I don't know what the ceiling is. Having said that, I like the way he is playing. He seems to have, it's almost as if he heard the skeptics, including maybe to some degree us, that at the end of last year, maybe Taylor had hit his ceiling, because I don't believe it anymore. I don't think he's going to make a big leap into the top 5, because I don't know how many of those guys he can replace, and they're too good. But I think he could rise a place or two, and certainly prove that he belongs in the top 10 for quite a while.
And we were talking about the draw in Australia. Like to say, you said there's so many guys that are so good. I mean, remember, he beat Tsitsipas in the round of 16.
Yeah,
then he'd have to get through Novak. And if he got through Novak, he'd still only be in the semis. I mean, that's how hard it is.
And playing Yannick Sinner in the semis. So it's asking a lot. But his attitude, he's a true professional, and he likes to play a lot. And I think he's the kind of guy that knows that if he goes into a 2-tournament slump, and it can happen to anybody, he'll make amends the next time around. And he's able to absorb losses as well as anybody I've seen at that level. And it seems he always is ready to get on with it. So I've been very impressed with the start of his year. I love the start of the year for Tommy Paul. Obviously, among the Americans, Tiafoe is going to be the big question mark now, because he did all right. You're in the semis, you can't knock it. But if somebody had told him you're going to lose 2-2 to Tommy Paul, he would have laughed at him and said, I respect Tommy to the hilt, but I'll take that bet.
Because there is a coaching change with Francis, right? So maybe sometimes you take one step back to take 2 steps forward. You know, him and Wayne Ferreira did some really, really good work together. He's no longer working with Wayne. He's working with Diego Moyano. So if the results seem inconsistent right now, maybe that's because it's a different type of coach player relationship. It may take time. Let's hope that's the case, because I think we all want to see Francis be a little bit more consistent and have better results.
Definitely. And I just feel like Wayne Ferreira did a great job with him. Wayne Ferreira got in his face at times. I know this from interviewing him, that he was very candid with him. If he didn't like something, he told him. I can't imagine that in the end was why they split the partnership, but whatever the reasons were, so far, I think he's missed him. And I hope that the new partnership gels, and that we start to see some, because Francis, toward the end of last year into this year, he had like an 8-11 match record. His results have slipped as of late, and he wants to make a move soon, and he may well do it. But I was surprised, because I thought that Ferreira was a really healthy voice to have around him, because he could praise him and pat him on the back when he deserved it, but also go to him and say, you got that all wrong, Francis. What are you doing? And I think that's what a player like Francis should want to hear.
We'll see how it all develops going forward. You mentioned Yannick Sinner a couple minutes ago. He continues his great play since Australia when he won his first slam. He wins Rotterdam, beats De Minaur. De Minaur is obviously playing well. Carlos Alcaraz played a clay court event in Argentina. He loses in the semis on clay. I know people are like, hey, he hasn't won a tournament since Wimbledon. I'm still not worried on Carlos. He's going to be fine. I'm not one of those that's worried at all.
No, I'm not either. But it's interesting, David. I watched the whole match. Nicholas Jarry had almost beaten him in this swing of the tour last year on the clay. They went a set to Jarry and 5-all in the second set before Carlos pulled away and won that match. So he knew, and they had a tough 4-setter at Wimbledon too, that Carlos won 7-5 in the fourth, and he was down in the fourth. It could easily have been in a 5-setter on his way to taking the title. He had a different reaction to this loss than I've seen. The quotes from him were very different. He basically said, "This hurt me." And he went on to explain that he feels healthy, but he doesn't think he's kind of mapping out the matches very well in his mind. He's not taking advantage of love 30 opportunities. He did play a very bad first set tiebreak that put him in a hole and eventually got broken to go down 5-3 in the second. And Jarry, despite some difficulties, held on and closed out the match. So I feel like that's typical of a lot of these Carlos losses. They're matches that he's in, they're matches that he could win, and he knows it. But he wants to break this losing pattern as soon as he can. I still can't believe that he won't. Indian Wells will be hard to defend. I get it. But somewhere along the line, he was going to get hot. My guess is he still may muddle through a bit, David, between now and the end of the hardcourt season. Maybe we see a final out of him in Indian Wells or Miami. But that the real progress may well come when he gets back out on the clay from Monte Carlo on. I have a feeling that's where we're going to see him start producing, because there'll be enough time for him to put all this behind him and start playing peak level of tennis. Because as he said about the Jarry match, he said, I played good tennis, but I didn't play my level. I thought that was a good description. It was okay, but not good enough.
He will, like I said, I think he'll do okay. I mean, winning, whether it's Indian Wells or Miami, again, that's difficult. The one problem with not winning since, we said Wimbledon is you start to eliminate the fear factor of your opponents when you don't constantly win. That's the one, if he doesn't continue to start winning some of these tournaments, that can get in the way a little bit, where the intimidation factor isn't there anymore against his opponents. So he wants to get that, because there was a time there, Steve, if it wasn't Novak, it was Carlos. And
oh no, it was, and that was true of the first half of last year, leading up to Wimbledon, the 6 titles. And yeah, he was great in Indian Wells. He was great on the clay. He was great at Wimbledon. So he was doing it on all surfaces, building up an aura. And I think, but my feeling is it's inevitable that he will start winning. And as soon as he grabs another title somewhere along the line here, then I think that habit of winning is going to come back, and his whole way of playing the big points is going to start to change. That you and I know, and I think most of his boosters know, he's just too talented not to reemerge. It will happen.
I agree. On the WTA side of things, Iga Swiatek over Rybakina, Swiatek's third straight Qatar Open. I mean, and we'll throw Sabalenka. Obviously, she won Australia. That trio of Swiatek, Rybakina, Sabalenka, that trio is not going anywhere. We've talked about that trio last year. It's going to continue into this year and into the foreseeable future. I think those three are a little bit ahead of everybody else, even the Coco Gauffs, even the Jess Pagulas. I think that trio is a little bit ahead of everybody else right now.
My only dispute would be I'd put Coco. I might throw Coco in there, but I see your point. Not Jess, but Coco. Given that she won the Open, given that she was in the semis of Australia, but there's no doubt that the three you mentioned are the true pace setters of the sport. With Coco, I think not far behind. But I thought this was a very important win for Iga. She'd had kind of a disappointing start to the year. She was in real trouble in the first set, down 4-1, 2 breaks. and Rybakina managed to somehow smack her leg on the follow through on her serve.
That hurts.
That required
All tennis players have done that. That hurts.
It happens. And so she didn't complain that it hurt her later. She just felt the time delay hurt her. And I get it. You want to keep moving at 4-1. The next thing you know, it's 4-all. And then Rybakina did break again to serve for the set at 6-5, but Iga broke back and won a very tense pendulum swinging tiebreak, saved a set point, and then was terrific in the second set. So I just feel like that win will propel Iga again. On the other hand, doesn't discourage Rybakina, who's had a fantastic start to the season. So losing this final to Iga is not going to seriously get in her way. And Sabalenka, listen, I mean, Sabalenka is going to ride that wave from Australia, and she's going to keep peaking for every major. And I do say this, if I'm going to call it right now, Sabalenka will end the year number one.
Rybakina?
No, sorry, Sabalenka.
Sabalenka, yeah.
Finding the name. Sabalenka will build on Australia, win another major somewhere along the line this year, win other tournaments, and I see her squeezing past Iga for number one this year and Coco and Rybakina fighting it out for 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's why I questioned it, because I said Rybakina. I mean, she's top. Like I said, she's part of the trio. But yeah, I would have been surprised if you picked
Sabalenka. But I just feel like, yeah, now interesting enough, she got killed by Rybakina in the final earlier in the year. It can happen, but that I like Sabalenka's composure these days, and now she's starting to show that she's going to be right in there in every single major. So, but it's going to be fascinating to follow this four. They are all so capable right now, and Rybakina wants to prove that her Wimbledon win a few years ago was no fluke, and she has been proving it.
Right.
And you got Coco, who won the Open, and despite a couple of recent setbacks since, including the semifinal loss to Sabalenka in Australia, she's going to be right in there. So, I mean, I see a lot of interesting battles among the four here who are going to really be fighting it out for supremacy all year long. And there's going to be some unexpected results there. But in the end, I think Sabalenka is the one who emerges on top.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one. All right, a few final things before we wrap up. For those that follow me and social media, you know I've covered the Delray Beach Open the last several years. I have some family down there, so it's always a good trip for me to leave the cold of Chicago to head down there. Randy Walker, I know I sent it to you, Steve. Randy Walker has a 6-minute video all about the Delray Beach Open. It shows about the tournament, shows about the restaurants and the fun stuff you can do on Atlantic Avenue. I mean, for those that are local, definitely go there. For those that want to get out of the cold climate, go. It's a smaller, intimate type of venue. You're going to see the players right there, 10, 15, 20 feet away from you. It's so much fun. And yeah, there's good food and drinks on site, and if you want to take a break, you can go right out and you're on Atlantic Avenue. There's so much to do there. I can't say enough.
And there's always the possibility that one of our viewers on YouTube will spot you on site and have a conversation. I
told everyone I would be down there. I said, come meet me and say hello, because it's it's always fun meeting tennis fans, and I've seen a lot of the same people there now every year since I've been going down. Also want to publicize one of your articles it's part of Advantage magazine. It's part of the Racket Sports Industry magazine. Steve, you wrote you write an article in it every publication now. But you had a nice article on Naomi Osaka. It's called Comeback Will Succeed. I don't think anybody disagrees with you on that. Who'd she play in Australia? Caroline Garcia, who's a good player. She lost to her. She just recently played her again and beat her in another good match. Naomi's going to be back soon, and I know we didn't talk about her in the trifecta just because she's been off the tour for a little while, but we wouldn't be surprised to see her playing in late stages of tournaments and slams in the near future.
Oh, it is. And she lost to a 2 tie-break match to Pliskova, a real servers contest. And then Pliskova, who had just come off a tournament win, was so was going to go do some kind of an MRI. She was maybe hurting a bit after that. Was bad luck for Naomi because Pliskova was in no position to play the semi. Who knows what Naomi would have done? But it was a good run to the quarters for Osaka. She's going to be there. I don't expect great results from her out on the clay, but I'm hoping that she does nice damage in Indian Wells and Miami, and then can from Wimbledon on, that we'll see big things from her. I think by then she'll have enough matches, enough confidence, and she's clearly enjoying herself on the court so much more than she did a few years ago. The time off did her a world of good. Yeah. The results will come. They will.
I agree. All right. Well, hey, the Sunshine Double is only a couple weeks away. We're getting there. There's a couple tournaments that are got to be played before then, but we're right around the corner from the Sunshine Double. I'm excited to cover it with you, Steve, and looking forward to continuing the season right now.
Yeah, David, it's been fun. There was a lot to talk about this week, and there certainly will be in the weeks ahead.
Agreed. Thanks, Steve.